Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, I welcome Ed Gonzales, a Microsoft MVP with a focus on Dynamics 365 sales, marketing, and customer service, but with a growing expertise around the Power Platform as well. We recently interviewed Ed for an article about his journey to become an MVP, and after I read the stories he related about working to improve user adoption, I quickly asked if he would join me here to discuss some of these topics a little further. As you'll hear, Ed's day job has plenty of challenges, from underutilized systems to processes that are still not optimized. But, like all MVPs, Ed is a self-motivated and optimistic tech evangelist. He talks about the possibilities of the systems he is putting in place, as well as his approach to embracing some of the newest technology, like Power Automate, especially from his perspective as a non-developer. All right, Ed Gonzales, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do in your day job, and what some of your sort of interests are?
So yeah, I mean, day job and interests cover a lot of ground. Day job stuff. So title includes a lot of things. Right now I'm working in marketing. I've been here, coming up on 16 years. And, started out in customer service, worked my way up to manage that department as kind of like a side project, was pretty integrated with sales and had a background with XRM or CRM solutions, not specifically Microsoft, but, knew my way around it. And so when the sales VP at that time was looking for something to do essentially all of the things that a CRM did, I steered him towards that direction, and we were already at the time using AX as our ERP here. And so it made sense to, continue to be a Microsoft house. And so we started exploring what at the time was, Dynamics CRM. And, that sort of evolved my position, but more or less just essentially added a bullet. So I still do all of, the other things. And then, by the way, I also am the CRM guy, which is okay because right now user adoption is low and, means the workload isn't terrible yet,
So if things go well, all of a sudden you might have just an even bigger workload as some of the measures that you're taking.
I welcome the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely welcome the challenge. I would embrace it. I'd love that. I'd love to have that problem. The idea is that, once it does take off, then it would turn into, an actual department or, at least a full-time gig for somebody. It doesn't have to be me, but because that would demonstrate that, hey, the company is doing the thing and taking it serious, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it seems like every it's a common challenge, right? That you hear about a lot of companies that struggle with that are trying to build user adoption, I should say, and get more people into the system to really get the value out of it that they would like to. And it sounds like you're really focused on that right now, playing kind of multiple roles. I think in the article, we described you as being both an advocate and an administrator and a user. Is that the case that you're sort of wearing a lot of hats right now?
Yeah, and I'm an advocate and an admin and a user for Dynamics, 365 on the CRM side, but I'm also like a big proponent for, the entire Office platform. There's not a lot, like when the user adoption culture that we have for the CRM side is kind of pervasive in the other technologies. And so I'm also always kind of pushing out, hey, here's some cool things that Teams can do. And here's this cool thing I found in Outlook. And I'm trying to push the company into being a little ahead of the curve when it comes to some of the technology stuff so that way folks can do the things that they do more effectively and really focus more on what they're doing rather than how they're doing it, right?
What are some of the measures you've taken maybe recently that have proved successful?
So actually yesterday is a great example. So in inside teams, which we're not totally adopting yet. We're still on Skype for Business, and so a lot of the companies is using combinations of stuff for collaboration. But I'm trying to push people towards teams. But inside that, I created a team for Office 365 tips, right? And yesterday, I shared a pretty big write up and walkthrough on the Find Time that's within Outlook that's been out for a while. But in my conversations and hearing, overhearing conversations around the building, I hear people struggling with trying to schedule meetings with a bunch of people. And I'm like, okay, well, there's this tool that we kind of already have. Let me push that out. And so I pushed that out through the Teams group that I have. And, within, I'd say 10, 15 minutes, my boss is patting me on the back and saying, this is great. This is fantastic. I love it. He had used it in a meeting request, or actually just in a meeting poll with the CEO and a bunch of other heavy players. So it was a good kind of, I'm making a difference moment. And that's, one of the big things for me is that, I want to make a difference here and walk out at the end of the day feeling like, okay, I did something, and that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, and on the CRM side, you wrote about, or you spoke about, even just a matter of sort of getting the right leads, like on the sales side, to the reps, and kind of using that, either building reports or moving data into the system that they actually find valuable. If I understood it correctly,
Yeah.
can just be a good incentive.
Absolutely. And so that was another reason. So in the article, when I was talking to Linda, when we first implemented CRM, it was a bit of a non-starter. The sales guys were just not interested at all. And so one of the things that I did was we were already going to trade shows. I mean, we're going to a dozen shows a year. And at the end of each show, we would get the lead file from whoever was putting the show on. And I started asking questions that, okay, what do we do with this? What are we doing with this stuff? And it turns out we weren't doing anything with the lead files. The sales guys would collect business cards and they put them in their pocket, or, file them away in the Rolodex in the trunk of their Buick. And there was really no quantification of what was going on. And so I thought, well, if we could at least start there, if we could at least start with how many badges did we scan at a trade show, then maybe we can at least have an idea of where we're going and possibly build some value into that. At least start to measure the ROI on the trade show, right? And so I just asked somebody, hey, every time you go to a show, you get this lead file, just send it to me. And so what I started doing is I clean up the file, get everything formatted, and then put it into our CRM solution as a lead, and then assign it to the respective salesperson. And eventually I was able to sort of work my way upstream so that now people are kind of thinking in the context of, as they're scanning these leads in at the trade shows, they're thinking about how that's going to get assigned, and they're thinking a little bit further down the journey, right? So now they're not just thinking about the conversation that's happening right in front of them, but they're thinking about, what's going to happen next? What's the next step? Eventually, I'd like to get to a place where we've got like the whole journey mapped out, and they can tell me exactly what that looks like from, prospect to PO and beyond, on the support side. But right now, I just keep making little inroads as I can.
That's really interesting. I mean, it seems like something that seems like the kind of measure that you would also get some support from, management level people, as opposed to just sales reps who are maybe trying to work on those contacts or leads. Does it work in both directions? Is it something where you're trying to gain support from management levels as well?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So the
Okay.
support that I get is there. As far as people saying, I think everyone agrees on the premise of it. Everyone agrees that, this stuff is important. There's enough data out there. There's enough, surveys and metrics and articles written by, Wall Street Journal and everybody else saying that if you're going to get far, if you're going to, be competitive, you're going to need, information. I've got a quote up on my wall where it talks about taking data, turning it into information, and then turning the information into insights, and then turning those insights into action, right? And you can't begin that journey until you have the data. So everybody agrees that the data is good, but when it comes to the transactional aspects of doing the work, well, how does that data get into, air quotes, the system, right? And that means that they got to do something different, not something extra, but something different. That's where I get into struggles, right? And so that leadership kind of buy-in hasn't totally translated into policy yet, and or procedures. And so that's been a bit of a challenge. And I just keep the pressure up, and I just keep trying to illustrate, hey, if we can make this a thing, this will free you guys up to do a lot of other stuff. Or at the very least, you can keep doing what you're doing, but the journey will be a lot better for your customers.
One of the things, maybe on a related note, it seems to me that Microsoft, with the product roadmap, with the customer engagement, umbrella, which isn't maybe even that useful an umbrella anymore, but there seems to be a focus on trying to, I don't know, streamline the use of tools that, like, let's say a sales rep would want to use, things that would actually make them say, oh yes, by using this my job will be better. And by the way, for the people who are trying to manage data and oversee things, it actually helps them too, with visibility and forecasting and whatever. But that the end user actually finds value in interacting with this tool, and not just putting the business cards in my Buick and driving off. I don't know. Do you feel like well, it seems to me, from sort of looking at your blog and sort of learning a little of the way you approach things, that you are encouraged by some of the tools that Microsoft's putting out there. I don't know. Am I right about that, or?
You're absolutely right. So I love the direction that the team is going. The ability to sort of push things down in the hands of what I'll call power users or makers and things like that, takes a lot of the load off. Well, a lot of one kind of load off of the administrator. There's a new level of governance that gets added in when you've got more people kind of building things and doing things, if you want to keep everything kind of clean. But for the most part, that means now that I, as one person, don't have to necessarily worry about how am I going to solve all of the problems, right? I now have the ability to kind of show people, well, here's how you can customize this, interface so that you're just looking at the things that matter to you. So I can have them build a Power App, or using, a custom interface that basically lets them build the journey. Or maybe they've got a mobile interface where they just have the buttons that they use, a phone call, maybe set an appointment or a follow-up, or find my customer, stuff like that. I mean, that it really is going, I think, a fantastic direction. And all I want is for, as an example, in my day job, is for us to at least keep following on that same path, and hopefully catch up to the curve.
Are there other people who either you work with or are sort of trying to build interest in, who sort of share your view of things? Are you trying to foster more of, I don't know what you call it, the power user mindset, or the sort of the ownership mindset with these tools?
Yeah, so I mean, that's how that whole Office 365 Teams thing came about, right? Is that there was a kind of a subset of people that I would call forward thinking in some of this stuff, and like maybe early adopters. And so I brought them into the initial iteration and said, hey, let's create a collaborative space where we can all share, the different cool things about the platform that we bumped into. So far, I'm the only guy providing content, but there are a lot of people that are consuming that content and, sort of integrating that into their everyday lives. So there are, a few people that are, I'll say, some level of excited about it, but I don't know if anyone shares my enthusiasm yet. So I'm hoping to build that, but I think everybody's so nose down in trying to do things, the way that they've been doing them, that they don't take the time to learn a new way, right? Recently, Brian Dang shared something on Twitter, and it's that drawing of the cavemen pushing a cart with square wheels, and there's some people off to the side with round wheels trying to get their attention, and they're like, we don't have time for that, we're too busy, and that's kind of what it's like. And of course, all the wheels are painted in the power platform logos and things like that. So I mean, it's very clever, but very appropriate. I mean, there's a lot of people that they won't take the time to learn how to do things better because they're so busy doing things the old way.
I mean, is there sort of a future state in your mind or a particular achievement in your mind if you can get a certain thing to a certain point that you'd really feel like you've hit a new stage of maturity at the company?
So now we're in the realm of digital, kind of a digital transformation, right? And a change management thing that is, I think, probably much bigger than just a single silver bullet. I think it's going to take that thing that you're talking about is super nebulous. It's going to be a shift in the culture. It's going to be a shift in how people think, their paradigm that tells them, that technology is a burden. That thing that tells them that, all of this means, quote unquote, extra work for me. We have to shift that mindset to a place where people recognize that if I take a moment now, if I take, extend a little more effort now, it's going to save me a ton of effort later. And all of these repetitive things that I do all over the place, I can automate and start looking for those patterns and look at things through the eyes of what do I really need to do right now, and what is important versus what is urgent, right? So that, I think that's the thing. I don't think there's like a certain technology that, if I could just get them to the CRM was a great example of that. I think a lot of people were looking at that as, if we implement CRM, that's going to solve all of our problems, right? But what most people bump into is that CRM is a great way, or any CRM solution is a great way to digitize what I'll call existing processes, right? But if you don't have any processes, or they're ambiguous, or you're working in this process vacuum, this solution, this automation, isn't going to do anything for you. You have to have those processes in place first, and then add that layer of technology on top to make things easier. So I think that's maybe the step that we need, and then the technology will really kind of accelerate.
Interesting. Well, I mean, in the meantime, it seems like you really keep yourself kind of busy and up to date and engaged on sort of the very latest stuff. I guess on your own time, when you're not sort of or maybe in addition to when you're in your day job, you write and blog about some pretty interesting projects that you have investigated yourself, and kind of seems like you do a really nice job of collaborating too. Maybe we could just talk a little bit about one of those as an example, which is, I think, the most recent one, the birthday chatbot that you've been sort of evolving. Can you talk a little about what that is and some of the technology that you put into use?
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, the thing that I'm trying to do is, I came into this as a user. Like, the Power Platform to me was super exciting because as a non-developer, right, I am able to do some really cool stuff with the platform. And so as I get into this, I bump into a lot of things where folks are saying, oh yeah, you can just fix that with a couple lines of code. But as a non-developer, I'm kind of what I'll call code averse, right? And it's not necessarily that I can't do it, or don't want to do it, or refuse to do it. It's one more thing to learn how to do before I really kind of get to the thing. So I'm always trying to stay kind of true that even as I learn how to do more complicated expressions, and I'm not going to call it code, but as I do these more robust things that aren't just drag and drop actions, I want to be able to show people that are new, like I once was, that even though you maybe don't write C#, even though that you're not a labeled developer, if you can manage some cool things in Excel, you can do some pretty cool things in the Power Platform. So with the birthday bot, the intent was to sort of, I mean, really the intent was, it started with a need. I am great at remembering birthdays, but I'm not necessarily great at sending some stuff. And so I wanted to create a kind of a chat bot that said, hey, you've got a birthday coming up. How do you want to manage that? Do you want to send an email? Do you want to send a text? Do you want to send a physical card? And so this whole journey has been about, basically getting to that point. But along the way, as I'm sort of documenting this thing, I'm learning a bunch of really cool things. That's why the part one part of the birthday bot has actually two iterations, because immediately after I published the first part, I learned something new that made it so that I could make the first part way cooler, way more elegant, way more efficient. And I wanted to walk the audience through that. And then also, as I'm going through this journey, there's all these little side shoots of things that, I mean, just from a brand new user's perspective, something like a do until loop, like you wouldn't even think about, you wouldn't even know that was there until you had some crazy need for it. And so I'm able to highlight a lot of different technologies and aspects with this, and at the same time still get to the end point, which is integrating, SMS and chatbot stuff, and in bringing in SharePoint and, the Outlook connector, and doing OData filters. And like I said, the do until loops, and also apply to each. And maybe there's some approval stuff, and going to fetch random quotes with an HTTP connector, things that like a just everyday user might not think they can do unless they had somebody say, okay, look, it's really not that scary. It's okay. And that all started out with what I called the Eat Like Ed thread, which was essentially where it was my very first HTTP connector, where I went and grabbed data from Yelp's API. And that whole point too, make this thing less scary so that, just everyday folks can get in there and do that.
Yeah, I mean, and the series of things you've written really builds that up from, right, like from kind of very basic, and yeah, the birthday chatbot's a great example of, I mean, you've pulled in a lot of different skills and sort of techniques, and you've evolved it. Like, you've made things better. They maybe only work. They still behave in pretty much the same way, but you've done it in a way that's either performs a lot better, or is a lot more elegant, or just allows you for more flexibility if you were maybe hard coding something. That was one of the things that really struck me, was how you kept improving sort of things that kind of worked, but you could make them better.
And I think that's normal, right? So if we're enthusiastic about something, and as we learn it, we want to take that knowledge and apply it to, the work that we've done previously, and we just always want to keep improving it. And it's one of the things I love about this platform, is that you can take an iterative approach. You can, in one of my sessions, I talk about, just do the thing, just get it to make your flow go from point A to point B. Don't worry about how pretty it is or how fast it is. Just have it work, and then go back and start cleaning it up and doing the thing, because this platform allows for that. Like, you can make those kinds of mistakes and still end up at the finish line. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And have you been able to take some of the things you've learned from Power Automate and apply them back in your day job with the customer service organization?
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the very first flows that I built was taking. So we sell stuff on Amazon, and because we sell through Amazon, meaning we're a vendor, not a seller, we don't have the ability to interact on a transactional level with the people that buy our stuff. But what we can do is, if they leave feedback, we can leave a response that basically says, hey, reach out to us, give us a call. So one of the first flows I did was I have an alert set up that when I get an email that says, hey, you got a 3-star review or 2-star or 1-star review, it will take all that, parse the information from the body of the email, create a ticket inside Dynamics 365, and then assign that to our customer care team, will then go into, Amazon, respond to the negative comment, and then close out the ticket with whatever the appropriate response was. And so in that right away, I mean, I was losing, I don't know, I'll just say I was doing 20 minutes a day of actual work, but then there's all that side time where you've got to shift gears from the thing that you're doing and move into this. And it wasn't 20 minutes all at once. It was 5 minutes here, 3 minutes there, a couple minutes there. And so all these interruptions that are also detracting from me staying on task and focused on the thing that I really should be doing, and not this administrative stuff of translating emails into texts, or emails into tickets rather.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. Thanks for sharing that. Um, other area I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on was something else you've written about, which is, and we talked about it already a bit, but sort of the future of using Teams and where you think it's going. You've written about using it with virtual agents. What's your view on where Teams is going in combination with enterprise systems?
Oh man, I think it's fantastic. It creates a space where people can collaborate super quickly. I don't need, and I mean, there's a lot of books out there outside of technology that basically steer us away from email, right? Email needs to be kind of the stuff that isn't super high priority. I just finished a book recently where he advocated for checking email maybe twice a day, if that, right? And you get people comfortable with the idea of, if you don't need my attention right away, but you want my attention at some point, then an email is fine. But if you want my attention right now, check my availability in the collaboration tool, in this case Teams. And if I'm there, send me something, and put it all in the first part. Don't send me a hey and then send it, right? Just send your request, and then that way I can integrate it and I can address it right away. I can tell you real time, hey, I don't have time to look at this right now, but give me about 20 minutes and I'll finish what I'm doing and I'll get back to you. That kind of stuff. And it includes file sharing, and I can search across all the threads. With Skype for Business, it's a little bit harder because I got to go into Outlook. I got to go look into the specific folder, and then I got to do the search in that folder, maybe do a conversation by conversation thing. And within Teams, I can just go up to the top search bar and it'll show me everything across all the teams, all the chats, all the everythings that have that search text in it, right? In addition to all that, you've got all the applications that are out of the box able to plop in there. I can put in, a planner page. I can, it has built-in wikis. You can build, as you mentioned in my example with the Power Virtual Agent, you can create your own custom app. And I'm, again, not a developer. I mean, people will argue that. People say, no, Ed, you're a developer because you're whatever, right? But I'm not working in, these IDE tools where people are writing code. I can edit code. I can maybe look at it and make sense of it, but I'm really not doing this full time. I've got a ton of other stuff. I'm a manager. I'm a whatever, fill in the blank with all the things that you do throughout the day that aren't the tools, right? And so when I find a platform that allows me to do really cool stuff, but doesn't require me to, spend time, going to school or reading a bunch of really thick books, I'm happy. I want to be able to just kind of pick it up, get in there, get messy and make some mistakes, but learn basically how to do the thing enough, right?
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see where. Well, I mean, first of all, that's an amazing sort of view of things for the way you work, and that's really cool to hear. And with regard to Teams in particular, I'm just fascinated to see how far it can go. That's sort of my kind of current state of mind with Teams. I mean, there's so much potential there. I don't think it's anywhere close to being realized yet in most organizations. Whether it's, I think the first thing that really impressed me personally was seeing, I think I was almost a prototype a year ago or so of like a CRM interacting with people, like sales reps in CRM interacting with non-CRM users in Teams and sort of sharing documents and getting approvals outside of CRM. This is a Microsoft demo, and I thought, wow, like that's really sort of blending the right information, kind of, and getting people inside and outside the system working together. I don't know how far that's actually come since last year, but things like that. just seem like almost totally unrealized at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of the technology. I mean, it's hard for me here in this bubble because it's hard for me to say, what other companies are adopting, how people are adjusting to the technology. But it does feel like, I mean, part of the thing is you want to meet your users where they're at, right? And so if you get people used to the idea and working in a single tool, that single tool has to be robust enough to kind of do the scheduling, the phone calls, the file sharing, the chats, the reminders, and then all the other stuff. So if you create a single space where users are doing that, then you can meet them with all of the other things there. And the architecture is open enough, I think, that even if there isn't a out of the box plugin that lets me do the thing, there's still going to be a way for me to do whatever it is I need to do. And you're right. There's a ton of technology. There's a ton of aspects around this that are probably underutilized in most organizations, and at the same time, they keep adding more. So how cool is
Right.
that?
Yeah, like I think like being able to sort of what's the word? I'm not sure the word for it, but sort of like make individual Power Apps available to be loaded into teams, to run it within a team, as opposed to saying run Power Apps and then maybe it's a subtle difference, but like the ability to sort of have individual apps that can now run in teams from Power Apps and publish them that way. That seems like a pretty big deal. Just as one example, I think some of the chat stuff that you've demoed is a pretty good example too of some of those possibilities.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good ways for us to go with this.
All right. Well, what else are you working on? Just I know you kind of you like to do a lot of different stuff, but maybe either in your day job or when you're out on your own. What are are there any other areas that you're really focusing on from sort of the Microsoft tech stack?
Yeah, so I mean, the chatbots thing has really kind of taken off. It's funny because late last year, I was scheduled to speak and present on chatbots and stuff like that, and like 2 weeks before, um, I had my presentation locked up and it was in a can, ready to go. And then 2 weeks before at Ignite, they announced Power Virtual Agent. So I had to go back and scramble and not only learn this new technology so that I could at least speak somewhat intelligently about it, but also integrate that into the presentation. That is pretty cool. I mean, I think it's maybe out of preview now, and people are really starting to get into it. But making that kind of stuff accessible is going to make a huge difference in the landscape as far as who's adopting this technology and how they're adopting it. I think there's still a few yards to go before it's super accessible, but that aspect of the technology is really exciting. So I've latched on to some other, like a third party provider on the chatbot scene, that's been around a bit longer, and I'm able to do some more things there that I can't quite do in the PVA side yet. But that's the kind of stuff that's exciting to me, because I can again meet the users where they're at. I can create a bot that the sales guy can say, or the salesperson can say something simple like, "I just met a new person," or "I've got a new lead," and then that triggers a conversation and says, "Okay, cool. What's their name? What's their phone number? Would you have their email address? How about a birthday?" And now they're not even thinking about, oh, I have to go into CRM and lug all this data around. They're just having a conversation, and eventually I can see it being voice activated or voice only, right? So now we're not having to type anything. I just got in the car after a meeting with a customer or client, and I can just trigger the bot, and as I'm driving away, be filling in that information, because the voice to text is robust enough now to manage that.
Pretty interesting future.
Right.
I can
Right.
I can see it all in my head, even if it's not quite there today.
We're really close. We're really close. And that's the thing, is like, we're right on the cusp of like a
Right.
lot of cool things. And I love that. I love that feeling, because you're like, now I can find some interesting way to use this thing, or I can finally solve this problem that I've been dealing with, because this thing will almost get me there. Right. So it's fun.
Anything else you wanted to cover before we start to wrap up?
I mean, the usual sort of, propping up, or I guess the bolstering of the new folks. If there are new people listening to this, it's easy. It's really easy to be discouraged. You bump into something and you're like, this thing doesn't do what I want it to do, or, it's stupid, or I'm not good enough, or whatever. I mean, just know that I can do this, and I don't have a lot of confidence, and anybody that knows me will kind of attest to that. And I realized that, the more I get into this, it's easy enough, and the community is supportive enough. I mean, just reach out, ask for help. People are eager to solve problems all day long, and they want to get in, and they want to kind of elevate everybody. And that's one of the reasons I really got into this, is because the community was so supportive.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks to Ed Gonzales for joining me on this episode. You can find Ed's blog, flyingpolymath.com. Check him out there or on LinkedIn. As always, you can reach out to me, Jay Gumpert, at msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.